All I require is to sit in the sun, read my book, alone.
I will leave you now to your book.
That is all I ask.
Books, young man, books, thousands of them. If time wasn't so important, I'd show you something. My library, thousands of books.
Hello, and welcome to the Trek Book Club podcast. My name is Peter Hong, and I'm the host of this podcast. This is a companion podcast to the Trek Book Club on X, formerly known as Twitter, where we read and discuss Trek books approximately every 6 weeks. On this pod, my guests and I will review and analyze a Trek novel which was discussed by the club community over a recent weekend. To learn more about the club, go to @TrekBookClub on X. For this introductory episode, I will give an overview of the pod as well as tell you my Star Trek and Star Trek books origin story. The podcast will start with a welcome and introduction of guests. First-time guests will give their Trek origin and Trek book origin stories. We will then introduce the novel, in which the group will give a summary of their reactions to the book. We will then do a deep dive in which the group will discuss approximately 5 to 7 main topics. The topics can cover the plot, the characters, any main themes, as well as memorable sequences. I envision this podcast as Trek fans having a casual conversation about the novel and Star Trek in general. So it's possible, even probable, that we will mention other Trek novels as well as the TV shows or movies. If time permits, I will also highlight a few threads from the weekend when this book was discussed. We will wrap up and conclude with each guest providing their final thoughts about the novel and share their contact information and any projects they are working on. In addition to book discussions, we will also have other types of conversations, such as interviews with Trek authors. So that's a high-level summary of the podcast. And now a little bit about myself. I discovered Star Trek in high school when I joined the astronomy club. It turned out that everyone in the club was a Star Trek fan except me. The club meetings were essentially discussions about Star Trek episodes and themes. I started watching TOS in syndication, which was the only Star Trek available at that time. I remember the first episode I watched was Metamorphosis, and the first Trek movie I saw was Star Trek III: The Search for Spock. My favorite series is DS9, with TOS being a very close second. Of the current Trek shows, my favorite is Strange New Worlds. I am a completist, having watched all of the episodes from all the series, although I'm a bit rusty on some of Voyager and Discovery. My first Trek books were the James Blish's TOS and the Alan Dean Foster's TAS novelizations, as well as some of the early Simon and Schuster numbered novels, such as Yesterday's Sun, which is my favorite Trek novel from that era, as well as The Entropy Effect and Ishmael. I took a long break from reading Trek novels until early 2020. I discovered Twitter at the start of the pandemic and soon found Trek Twitter and then joined Trek Book Club, which rekindled my interest in Trek novels. I started to read a lot of Trek novels and still look forward to Simon & Schuster's 99-cent Trek ebook sale every month. Some of my favorite novels include the Destiny and Coda trilogies, the Vanguard series, and the TOS TNG crossover novel Federation. I became a co-host of the Trek Book Club in early 2021. The Trek Book Club podcast, which was hosted by club founder Trekkie Rob, was paused a while ago, but I have received a few requests to restart it. Coincidentally, I was also thinking of resuming it, so I restarted the pod in the fall of 2022. In the spring of 2024, I received an opportunity to have this podcast join the BQN Podcast Network, which I accepted. Please check out the other podcasts on the BQN network for additional conversations about various parts of the Star Trek universe. So that's some background about the podcast and myself. I hope you enjoy it, and I would appreciate any feedback. Thanks, and live long and prosper.